Hello, the founder of ROYBI. Hello. Good to have you here. Okay. What did you bring us there?
I brought the ROYBI.
That's what I thought.
Well, I brought it because a lot of people think, when I talk about robots, they think it's a huge, big robot for kids. I'm like, no, it's actually really small. It is designed for kids to easily hold it, interact with it.
So talk me through it for people who see it for the first time. First of all, you said it requires Wi-Fi, so it's not connected now. But, it looks amazing. My inner 12-year-old is very excited already. What does it do? How does it work? What are we looking at?
Well, let me actually go back a little bit, because when people ask about a product, I think it is really important to know why we actually built this product. So I will always love to start with our story, especially my story. I was born and raised in Iran. I think a lot of people here know where Iran is, in the Middle East. And growing up as a woman in Iran, 20, 30 years ago, it was very, very challenging, limited resources, especially when it came to education, because culturally also, unfortunately at that point, they wanted women out of school as soon as possible. And I was really fortunate because my parents gave me the opportunity for quality education. And it really helped me to become the person I am today. So I truly understand the value of education, especially when it comes to early childhood education. So when I moved to the US about 18 years ago, it feels like yesterday, honestly, I put it as my mission to somehow change the world. And when they say if you want to change the world, it really starts by educating children. I was super passionate about giving back and education, and that's how we started, thinking about what we could build for children to have this interaction when they are little. And we realized, especially in the US, 1 out of 12 kids, they have some sort of speech disorder. That gave us the idea of building a robot that focuses on communication skills. It's an AI-powered educational robot for kids aged 3 to 7. Teaches them different languages. We have English, Spanish, Chinese, French, and we're adding more. And it helps kids to interact, to talk. And one of the case studies we did, it actually showed the interaction increased by 86%, and the screen time dropped by 46%, which is a huge deal for us.
I just have to jump in there. Wow. But that's a crazy story. You probably left out a couple interesting things. Yeah. So you moved from Iran to the US some 18 years ago, and then you founded a company that builds robots and does stuff with AI. And you just mentioned the essence of education, how important it is. You probably need some insights to build a robot and know a thing or two about AI. So how did you acquire that knowledge, that skill set, that network to get started there?
It was magic. No, I'm joking. It was really difficult. The idea of ROYBI actually started in 2017. It was a completely different product. It was mostly focused on entertainment. It was a much bigger robot. We had no clue what we were doing. And after talking to a lot of people, experts, and a lot of our team members, we did so much research in 2 to 3 years to actually understand what the needs are. And then, also when it comes to the design, it's not just the AI. You want a good performing processor in something really small that gets hot. You want to make sure it doesn't get hot. It is small enough for kids to easily take it with them. And all I could say is I have to give credit to a lot of incredible people that helped us with this. We have amazing advisors in AI, in education. My co-founder, fantastic person. He also has 3 kids, so he knows a lot of pain points. And we just learned, and even myself, I love learning. I learn something new every day, and watching a lot of YouTube videos and reading books. That's how I keep up with all the technology changes.
So tell us, what does ROYBI do? How does it work?
So it is an interactive robot. It has voice recognition AI, so it can actually understand what the child says. About 3 years ago, we also acquired a company called KidSense AI. They had NLP and data set for children, over 150,000 data compliant with privacy policies in place. We actually acquired them to also have our technology on edge, meaning the connection could actually get done on the device for privacy reasons, so it doesn't have to go to the cloud. And as I mentioned, it comes with short stories, less than 5 minutes, because kids have really short attention span. Talks to them, gives them stories, asks them questions. It repeats actually, so they can repeat specific words. We focus on pronunciation because we teach them languages. And obviously we also have some STEM activities as well.
Now here's the first audience question. Again, I love audience questions. And the more you ask, the more I'm going to also read out. Obviously, first come, first serve. Here's the first question. Tiberi would like to know, how are you positioning ROYBI in comparison to the likes of Dash & Dot, Sphero, Cubeto in the minds of parents and teachers? Great question.
Absolutely. All those products are great, but we are in a different niche because we focus on communication. They focus mostly on coding. And I actually met with 6 superintendents in Arkansas. We are expanding our business from Silicon Valley to the central US. And 92% of those superintendents said that the language acquisition and speech is one of their top priority because of the needs for kids to communicate more. So again, those products are amazing, but what we do is completely different, focusing on languages and communication skills, as well as, of course, speech development.
Now, just out of curiosity, is this something which makes sense for all types of kids, or specifically where parents have less time, or specific speech impairments? So what's your sweet spot you're aiming for?
All kinds of kids, honestly, aged 3 to 7, but we do have a lot of kids that are on autism spectrum or they have speech delay. We are actually piloting with a couple of districts in Arkansas just to focus on speech development and basically kind of speech therapy. But because we have language learning, any kids and even adults are welcome to learn from ROYBI. I myself try to learn Chinese, but sometimes too busy to do that.
How's that going?
Not so good. I know a few words.
You're a busy person. You just mentioned outside, we just had a quick chat, you mentioned you're also working on your pilot's license.
Yes, I got my pilot license 2 years ago, and I always joke about it. I love challenge, and I think I was bored, and I was like, what's the new thing to do? And I became a pilot.
So we've got Chinese, we've got pilot license, we've got building a hardware product using AI. What's the next big challenge?
Good question. I love building, and I love building, I love sharing. I get a lot of opportunities to go to amazing conferences like here. I'm incredibly excited to be here in Slovenia. In a million years, I actually never thought I would come here and be able to just share my experiences, and I hope it can inspire people, because when you are an entrepreneur, there are times that you just want to give up. And if you hear from someone else that they've done it, we still have our own struggles, obviously. As you grow, you have more problems. I always joke about it. But different kinds of problems. And, that's where I spend my time trying to give back.
I'm curious, before we... I'd love to know all about the AI behind that and maybe also your vision and so on. But I'm curious, you just mentioned the struggles. I mean, as a woman growing up in Iran and then moving to the US, so fully new ecosystem, and then building a tech hardware product in the midst of a global pandemic and all of that, there must have been quite a few dark spots. What was like moments which you look back where you're like, man, that was a tough one, where you were like really on the edge?
A lot of areas, especially, as an immigrant, you're going to a new country, you need to learn the culture, the language, and, I was fortunate enough to start learning the English language back in Iran, but it's really different when you go to the country, making connections, going to school, actually. But I think the most difficult part for me was actually fundraising, because I didn't have any connections, and at early stage, you need warm introductions. As much as the VC world has changed a lot since 12, 15 years ago. A lot of VCs now are open to warm introductions, but at that point, when we were fundraising, that was a big challenge. And even to this date, I think fundraising is difficult because they have a completely different business model. As founders, we focus a lot on product, on impact, but they have different vision, and it is understandable. But I think so far that has been difficult, and especially that we have a hardware component. Especially in Silicon Valley, everybody focuses on software, but we've made it easier for investors to understand that it's not scary.
I mean, people say hardware is hard. I think that's one of the smartest sentences ever. Hardware is hard. Along the journey of having this little guy standing there, what were some of the learnings you took along, which you could maybe share? And maybe while building up about that, you can give us some numbers that we can understand the impact you are creating.
So many problems, especially that, we raised almost 5 million in 2019, and we were so excited, and then pandemic came, and with a hardware company, it was so challenging. I always joke I aged 20 years because of that, because every night I was sleeping and I was like, oh my God, we're gonna go bankrupt. And we learned a lot actually about, all the difficulties, how to navigate, how to adapt, how to change. I think we changed our business model at least 10 times and we're still changing. But, the core value and vision is still the same, but the way that we're doing it is very different. I give you an example. Like in the past, we were just selling the robots. There was no licensing or any recurring revenue, and VCs and investors love this type of business model. Now that we are working with schools, we have a completely different model, and it all came to us because of the challenges we went through. We learned, what it takes, all the costs involved. So we sell the robot at minimum cost, and then we charge a licensing fee per student, and we also have licensing for our learning management system. And it has worked pretty well for us. We also looked for outside funding, like as an example, grants. In the past, we weren't even aware of these opportunities, and during pandemic and everything that we learned, it helped us to change our direction for better, actually.
Could you just give us kind of some numbers to understand, like how big is ROYBI? Not size-wise, but how many products have you shipped? Like how many schools? Just that people have an understanding. I
usually don't share numbers because we are a private company, but several thousands of them. We've been selling for the past 3.5 years in North America, and it was on the cover of Time magazine, one of the best inventions in education. So we made an impact, and now we are focusing on, for example, just our pilot with schools. We are focusing on 6 districts, and that would give us over 20,000 students just in a small region. Opportunity is much bigger, and we have investors, corporate investors, and we are expanding into schools in the US, and gradually we'll be expanding. Hopefully next would be Europe.
That's a very clear statement. So you're coming to Europe. When exact date, please? No, I'm just kidding. Now, here's another question. As a fellow edtech startup, this is from Slido. As a fellow edtech startup, how do you balance between making an impact and building a business? That's a great question. For example, for kids to learn more, some things should be harder to do, but customers want to go the easy route. Great one.
Yes, that's a deep question actually. But in terms of balancing impact and business, my focus is because of my job, I need to make money for the company. We are a for-profit company. We have shareholders, investors. A lot of my focus actually goes into making sure that we are generating revenue. But also, as we are working with parents, with schools, we continuously get feedback. We have case studies, we have pilot programs. That's how we measure impact. But it's like two different ways. When we go to, for example, VCs, we talk a lot about numbers and not so much about impact. But when we go to foundations, as I mentioned to you outside, we are right now working with Walton's Foundation, which is for Walmart. We actually got a grant from them. We talk a lot about the impact. They don't care so much about how much revenue we're generating. They really care about what the impact is and how many kids' lives we are changing.
How do you measure that impact? Is there some way you can put your thumb on that?
So as far as impact, we have different focus. As I mentioned, one case study we did with Texas University showed 46% screen time drop and 86% increase in interaction. Now the pilot program we have with schools, we're going to measure the impact on improvement on speech, language acquisition. One school district actually wants to know if the kids can do their homework faster with the robot. So each collaboration is different, and we're going to have different types of metrics.
Now, here's a bit of a critical question, but I bet it's one you've heard a dozen times, probably a week at least. So a certain anonymous says, no hard feelings. I'm happy for your success story and product, which was successfully launched in US especially, no wonder. But for kids to talk to the robot instead of other kids is a step back, not forward. Yes, I bet you've got that quite a few times.
We get these questions, yes. But think about it. Your child is already spending a lot of time on phones and tablets and sometimes learning nothing because a lot of them, they just play games, moving things around. And that's why we have a lot of problem in early childhood. Speech is just one of it. And instead of spending their time on these devices, and by the way, our kids these days, even adults, are very much device dependent. So think about it, that we give them ROYBI, that they actually see it as a friend, they can talk. It actually gives them more self-confidence to go out. We actually have social emotional programs as well to teach kids about feelings, about interactivity. We have activities that encourage kids to go do some activities with their friends and parents and come back and report to the robot. So we understand that side of it. But instead of spending their time all day on devices that they don't learn anything, we could replace it with ROYBI.
I mean, I think it makes perfect. I'm a father of a 4-year-old, and I told you outside my daughter's coming in July, and we speak 3 languages at home, so it's kind of quite complicated. And I think we spend a lot of time with our little one, a lot of time. But still, I thoroughly believe in the power of AI in enhancing education, because for me, AI is all about pattern recognition. And you talked also about identifying some challenges in speech and improving upon that. I would assume that AI is a real product booster behind that, right? And I would also assume that this probably can give back very individualized feedback. So maybe you can talk us through that a bit, the impact of AI with ROYBI.
Absolutely. I remember when we launched our crowdfunding campaign, a lot of people were attacking us, saying AI is bad. But if you think about it, AI is not a new thing. Like computer vision was out 20 years ago, and it's just that now AI is more accessible and more affordable to use for us, as consumers. And we like it or not, it's there, and it's better to be educated. And we always say there's a lot of conversation about AI in education, and our President Trump recently signed an executive order to have AI in schools. So it's a really big deal. It can help kids to learn better, to personalize their experiences. For example, even on ROYBI, we have machine learning that gradually learns about kids. It can also gradually learn about what they say, and the way that kids talk is very different. It can gradually adapt to them, and it can adjust the content based on their needs and their progress. And what we want to do in the future is to actually even focus on their emotions. If we are teaching them math and they're frustrated, rather than having a frustrated kid, why can't we change the direction of the lesson to actually play something that they enjoy and incorporate math in that kind of content? So those are the ways, and the future that I can see for education. And when it also comes to teachers, it can actually help them a lot. The teachers now use ChatGPT every day, and helps them with admin work, saves them time.
I think it makes like the funny thing is, for me, when I look back in school, I was like the worst kid in school. I was. Teachers were always saying he's not listening, he's not interested. But I'm like the most right, same thing. And I'm like the most curious person in the world. But my curiosity wasn't answered. And the way I was taught in school was basically shut up and write down, and then just tell us again what are the 7 pillars of blah blah blah. My brain does not function like that. And for me, AI. And as you just said, AI that learns how the person's brain that it's interacting with functions, and how to maybe help them engage in a topic in the most efficient way. Now, fun fact, it took me 20 semesters to get my degree in university. Now I lecture at 4 different universities, which I find hilarious. But from the school system back in the day, they told me, nope, you're too dumb for this. I had to figure it out myself the hard way. How do you think will AI leverage this in the next couple of years? And maybe a second question, I mean, every day we're seeing that cost of AI is going down. People are learning how to handle AI. What's the impact going to be of this on your business?
You actually said something very, very important. Why do we label kids? Just because they're not interested in a subject doesn't mean, they are, they don't know, they don't have the skills. While we can use AI and machine learning to actually teach them the subjects they're very interested in, and incorporate, let's say if they're interested in art, we can still incorporate math, if they don't like it. But in the past, we didn't have these tools and resources. And obviously the cost of AI is coming down, the cost of hardware is coming down. Even for us, we reduce our cost by 35%, in the robot. It's actually really cheap to make it. But it's not like before, and there are a lot of resources. And every day there are new AI tools like AI agents, and a lot of machine learning products and opportunities to help kids to learn based on their skills and abilities and what they like, rather than forcing them because of the traditional system.
I'm curious, if you look at the traditional system, I think people who profited of that were people who were, let's say, very mathematically driven, very much 0 and 1 driven. What do you think is the impact of AI in general on our education system, and maybe elevating different learners and different learner types within the next 10, 15, 20 years? What's your thought on that? Will different people emerge?
Absolutely, because as I said, the education system is completely traditional. It's like classroom setting still looks like 100 years ago. And the world has changed. Our surroundings, our knowledge, the things that we need in the future have changed. And I think, we need to teach our kids about the opportunities, about AI, business, entrepreneurship, And at early age, because the world 20 years later is going to be completely different than what it is today, and they need to have the skills to be successful in that world, and AI is definitely one part of it. I also always get the question that AI is going to replace people. Yes, maybe we don't have some specific jobs, but we are going to have different types of positions and jobs, especially in AI and machine learning.
Now, just a bit of a perspective of ROYBI. I know it has AI, it has facial recognition. What's the next thing that's going to happen with ROYBI? What's the thing to look out for? What's kind of, maybe as the last question, what's in the path?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we really also want to focus on emotion detection. It does have emotion detection. So far, we don't really use it because of some privacy issues. And we want to take different clues from voice to movement to emotion to actually learn about kids and what they like, because even the facial expression is important. Sometimes the kids, especially the ones that are non-verbal, it's really hard for them to tell everyone how they feel, what they like and dislike. And those are the things we really want to focus on. It actually comes with a small charging plate, ROYBI, that the kids can press buttons, and we specifically designed it that way for non-verbal kids to be included for the interaction with the robot.
So exciting. I can't wait to see it. Can't wait that you bring it to Europe. No pressure, but
Absolutely. We are looking for partnerships, so anyone interested, please talk to me.
Well, I'd buy one straight away. I love the idea. Now, I'm going to try and summarize what we talked about, because I've got 11 seconds left for that. So what I found interesting was, in your journey, where you're born doesn't matter, it's where you go. And you're going places, and we figured out quite quickly that from Iran to the US to our consort to being on stage here is, well, it's just a matter of transport and mindset, and you have a lot of both on that. And we talked about ROYBI, and you said the interesting thing was, it's not the easiest of building a hardware product. That hardware is really quite hard, but it's going on. And that the interesting thing is here that we have a perfect timing, I think, with this product, because AI is coming along nicely, and we have two factors I find spectacular. Children, which are always the closest to our hearts, and then we have a classroom system that hasn't been changed in more than 100 years. So you said nicely, the classrooms haven't changed, but the outside world has. And ROYBI seems to be something that is changing quite strongly, and specifically, the needs that are required are very individual for children. We've only had one mold to put everyone in there, and that doesn't make any sense at all. I really like that approach that you're saying, maybe it's not just about replacing, but it's about enhancing, especially children with certain impairment. And at the same time, you also mentioned that 1 in 12 children has a speech impairment, a speech disorder. And the funny thing is, probably looking at AI and knowing it's about pattern recognition, probably will be able to identify even more disorders. Absolutely. And probably address them as well. So I think that's really exciting. Thank you.
And I also want to mention that, I truly encourage everyone to really believe in themselves and work on something that they're really passionate about, because on the way on your journey, there are going to be a lot of people trying to discourage you. Not that because they have a problem with you, it's just their perspective is so different. And I always tell everyone, don't listen to a lot of those things, and be open to change and feedback, obviously, but do not give up. A lot of companies don't survive, not because of resources, it's because people just give up too early, too soon, And every journey has its own difficulties. Even 9-to-5 job, they have their own problems, But being an entrepreneur is a blessing, because somehow you're going to change the world, even small. You are going to do that. You're going to have an incredible impact on the world. So do not give up. Believe in yourself and work on what you're really passionate about.
And that's perfect closing words. Thank you very much, Elnaz. That's the part where you applaud.
Thank you.
Thank you.